My name is Neil, and I just thought I'd like to share a few thoughts about my language learning journey over the last few decades. Hopefully, to maybe encourage those who are starting out, have a few thoughts together about how or if you can learn a new language. So I can go all the way back to my school days where I had to do a little bit of Welsh and French and German. And to cut it a long story short, I was a complete disaster. Didn't learn any of them. I think maybe French was my best, but very, very, very limited. And so I just left school with this idea that I was just rubbish at language learning and there was no hope. I was never going to learn another language. And when I was 18, I moved away into an international situation. I lived on a ship, and there were about 350 of us from 42 different countries. A lot of people from South America, a lot of people from Southern Europe, as well as all over the world, Asia, Africa, North America, and so on, and Europe, obviously. I made friends with a lot of Argentinians, Brazilians, and my dad had said to me, while you're away for these 2 years, try to learn another language. Uh, that wasn't the thing that was on my mind to do, but I did hang out a lot with Latinos, particularly. A lot of Argentinian friends from Colombia and so on. And I thought maybe I'd learn Spanish. And I could sing along with a couple of songs in Spanish and so on. Then I met a group of Brazilians, and I really got into the Brazilian crowd. I ended up having a Brazilian girlfriend, went to Brazil for 4 months when I was in my early 20s, about 21, and started to pick up a few words, a few phrases in Portuguese. Then, when I was 23, I moved to Portugal. I taught English for many, many, many years, and I learned Portuguese. But I didn't learn Portuguese through classes. I was teaching other people English through classes, but I never learned myself through classes. I just wasn't interested in studying the grammar. And my question about classes was, most people learn about grammar rules. You learn some vocabulary, but you learn a lot about grammar and structures and sentences and so on. And I thought, we didn't learn that in English in school. So if I didn't learn it in English, you know, how do I know if you explain the grammatical concept to me? Because I wasn't able to understand what that really meant. So I did it in other ways. I picked up the language through listening to people, hanging around, listening, watching TV, listening to songs, sometimes picking up a newspaper. But it was something of the advantage that I was living in the country and that, if I go down to the cafe, I can order the coffee or my meal or whatever, and learn how to do that in a language because I was fully immersed, as you say. If you are not fully immersed, if you don't have the option to surround yourself with a language, I guess that's where a lot of people think that I need to get a class. I need to do a class. I need to find a group of people who, will kind of create that situation, that context for me. But I think nowadays with the internet, there's so much that you can do to surround yourself. You can watch the news, you can listen to music, you can watch people talking. You won't understand anything. Obviously, when you're starting off, you understand zero, but you get used to the sounds. You get used to hearing the sounds. Maybe you could practice making the sounds. And actually, after a little while, you start to associate little bits and pieces then of a language and start learning. Not to say that it's guaranteed. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of practice, a lot of things that you need to be willing to make a bit of a fool of yourself, maybe say the wrong things. I remember one time in Brazil, I went out with a friend. We went to the cinema, and I said sorry about something because I said something and I just wanted to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And I repeated, "Oh, I'm sorry, sorry, sorry." I said it 3 times, but instead of saying sorry in Portuguese, I said fart, fart, fart in Portuguese, which they thought it was hilarious. And that was, my God, that was 40 years ago, and they still laugh about that today. When they talk about me, they still remember these stories. So you have to be willing to kind of make a fool of yourself. My expertise really in language learning is in Portuguese. My Portuguese is pretty strong. I reached what you would call a C2 level of Portuguese, which means that's the highest level in terms of foreign language learning. I did a degree in a Portuguese university, all through the medium of Portuguese, um, and I managed really well with Portuguese, European Portuguese, and also with Brazilian Portuguese. But at the same time, I also picked up quite a lot of Spanish over the years, and I found that when I would go to Spain, there was something that would automatically, they're very, very different languages, but I was having some exposure to Spanish through music and through some um, through friendships and so on, and listening to people speaking it. So that when I would go to Spain or a Spanish speaking country, like recently I went to Tenerife, and it comes out in Spanish. I actually managed to get by. Those are the two languages really that I would say that I can, one of them very, very well, almost a native speaker, and the other one at a functioning level. I can read a lot, I can understand a lot, and speaking is a little bit more of a challenge, and writing, forget it. Um, but I'll explain a few things and a few techniques, maybe a few ideas to make a start. So if you're thinking about Portuguese or Spanish or Italian or French or any other European language, any other world language, I think that the concepts that I share will be useful, particularly as at the beginning stage. Um, when you develop more appetite and more frustration with the fact that you think you really need to know how things work better, I think that those are the times to actually start thinking about taking a class, and making things more structured. And I think one of the things I've seen people who have learned to speak English at an extremely high level. Some of those I saw starting off at zero when they were little kids, and now they're adults and they function perfectly in English. And I saw other people that struggled. But even though they struggled over the years of the classes that they had, um, they ended up actually being able to manage to get by in English. But I also saw the other side of things, people who'd lived in the country, people who'd lived in Portugal for 5 years, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, who really could not speak the language, even though every day they had the opportunity to interact with people from that language, they didn't develop the skills. And I think there's something intentional that you have to want to. In some places, it's easy to avoid being with a group of people, and also, I think you to find that motivation, you need to find the language that really gives you the buzz, the language that you really, really want to have a go at. So hopefully, I'll be able to give you some encouragement, and some tips that might be useful for you as you begin the journey. Thanks for listening.